everybody.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening and coming out to meet Laurent and screen what is a beautiful movie, music by John Williams.
He always finds a way to tap into the essence of what makes it moving or meaningful.
The main reason I think it's important to celebrate him is just to say thank you for that amount of joy.
He's always in a process of discovery.
He finds a whole new way of telling the story musically each time. It's the purest form of art I've ever experienced from any human being.
Music is enough for a lifetime, but a lifetime is not enough for music.
I want to start out by asking you, Laurent, if you can recall your first experience watching a movie in which John was the composer.
Well, I have a kind of an interesting journey with John because I grew up in France, and in the 70s, movies would reach us about 6 months after America, but the albums, soundtrack albums, would come out first. So I basically discovered all my favorite American movies through music. And I realized, oh my God, they're all composed by John Williams. And my dad traveled a lot to America when I was growing up. So he would come back in his suitcase with the soundtrack for Jaws. I remember him opening my suitcase and there's the music. So I could literally walk into the movie 6 months later when it finally came to the French screens, humming the music. So that was my introduction, actually, to American cinema, was mainly through music, which is pretty exceptional and made me hopefully a good choice to make this movie.
When did you first meet him?
I first met John 30 years ago when I was brought in by Steven Spielberg, to whom I owe my entire career, to start doing documentaries, retrospective documentaries for him. And I was as intimidated to meet John as I was to meet Steven, for the reason I just explained, because he just meant so much. And I could recite his music, and that first encounter was incredible because, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have met John. He is just so modest, I would say to a fault, but just so full of interesting stories and very warm, very relatable, just like his music. You know, there are people who are creators who are like their creations. You know, they are reachable, they are huggable, they are people you really feel that there's no mystery as to why their music or their work is just so, relatable, really is the word. And John, John has incredible humanity, which you feel in his music, but you also feel that in his presence.
So I understand that this particular movie was difficult to make because John initially did not want to do it. So how did you convince him otherwise?
Well, I met him, as I said, 30 years ago, so I've been trying to do this for 30 years. And each time I would see John, I would say, what about that feature doc we should do on you? Oh, no. Angel, he calls me. And so finally, he turned 90, and I was part of a team that did all kinds of little films for an honor he was going to receive at the Kennedy Center in Washington. So suddenly I had this incredible library of things for the past 30 years, but really came into conscious of it, around that event. And I told Steven Spielberg, I said, Steven, this is crazy that there is no documentary about John, and the documentary genre is really exploded the past 5 to 10 years. And I said, this is no longer a niche market. This is an actual genre, and we have to do this about John. So Steven went to tell John and asked him, actually at the event, and John said yes. So I get a call from Spielberg saying, Laurent, he said yes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm crying on the phone. And Steven said, I know how you feel. This is incredible. We're going to do this film. I get a call a week later, and he said, I think it's gone down to about 60%. And I'm like, oh, God. And I just happened to be at Amblin, and I'm not making this up, you guys. I put my computer in one of the conference rooms, and I stepped out, and I came back, and there is John Williams in the room looking at the window. And I'm like, what is he doing here? And he says hello, and we start chatting. And in the flow of the conversation, he says, Laurent, I don't want to do the documentary. And I'm like, why, John? He's like, well, I don't think people really care about me. And I'm like, okay, well, I can tell you that that's not true, but give me another reason, because that one I won't buy. He said, well, I just don't want to talk about myself. And I said, well, I'm going to reassure you, because this is not about you. And he looked at me, he's like, not about me. I said, no, it's about your music. And it's about your musicians. And suddenly I saw in his face that he could trust me, that I could do something and discuss his life, but always through music. And you'll see everything that's discussed in the film. I never really flat out asked him a question. It was always sort of relating to a piece of music or something that related to his musical taste, which meant doing a lot of research and a lot of, listening and absorbing. But I was way ahead because I'd been thinking about this for 30 years. So it was great. But listen, if it's too easy, it's not going to be a good film. So I hope that it was worth the wait. And I hope, for me, it was worth the wait and the wait and the wait. You know what I mean? So.
What did you learn about his creative process during your journey of having met him to making this film? Is there something special that stood out or that you didn't know that you learned throughout this?
Well, I'd rather you guys watch the film, but, I'll say that the thing that's wonderful about John, and in fact, I think is the secret to his connection with Steven, is they're both classically trained. They love film, music, history, and therefore there is a reverence toward the past. And in a sense, by embracing it, they make everything they do very timeless. And I think that part of the process also with John is, and Steven alike, because they're like brothers, right? So they're really very reflective of one another, but it's this constant curiosity that at his age, 92, he is still curious, he still challenges himself. And Steven is the same. I'd argue that Steven has never made the same film twice. Even when he was doing another Indiana Jones, it always felt like brand new to me. And John is the same. And I think that's so inspiring, especially for young people who may want to be filmmakers or musicians, to say that curiosity and challenging yourself, trying to reinvent yourself, is what really gives you longevity in this business.
I would say that John's impact on our culture is extraordinary because it's beyond just filmmaking and being a composer. We hear it's NBC Nightly News, it's the Olympics, it's the Boston Pops, it's the extraordinary films and the music that he gives each character, their scene music. Is there a specific message that you hope audiences take away from the film?
Well, it's several layers. Film scores have not always been appreciated or recognized as an art form. In fact, the famous composer Bernard Herrmann, who worked with Hitchcock for many years, don't call him a film music composer or he'll bite your head off, right? I'm a composer, I'm a music composer. As if film and music is just sort of subpar. But there is reality to that. In fact, in John's career, at some point, he was at the Boston Pops and the musicians refused to play film music. and he walked away. He quit, and you'll see what happens in the film. But by sticking to his love of film music and recognizing it as an art form, he has made it legitimate. And I think all of us who love film and who love music can say that John Williams has really legitimized an art form that was not always embraced by, not only peers, but the general public. What else did I learn? I mean, I learned so much about, and I hope that's again, like the temptation was very much to do a hit parade of all my favorite tunes, right? So there's an aspect of that because it's music after all, but it really is a journey and a life well lived in music, and you'll see his love for the musicians. And I've seen him backstage sometimes at the Hollywood Bowl, and he went over to the harpist and said, I'm writing something for you, and 3 harps, do you think that's too many? Should it be 2? And I just love seeing this sort of childlike, a fascination with his art form, and that I find very inspiring. So I think there's still a lot to learn from him. I never thought the film as definitive. It's my vision of what John means, and I hope that that brings a light for, especially some people don't know who he is, may want to really explore his body of work, which extends outside, you mentioned, stuff he's done always with images, but he's done music for concert music that's completely abstract and challenging, and it really has John's brain and John's voice as well, but it's very different,
Well, you've done a magnificent job with this film. It's beautiful. Congratulations. And before we show the movie, I just want to open it up to the audience. Does anyone have a question for Laurent?
Congratulations. This will be my second time seeing it. And
oh, great.
It's
Thank you.
stupendous. Just terrific. And
Thank you so
captured
much.
the soul of this man, and he's one of the great classics, and congratulations to you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
There are 2 basic kinds of documentaries. I mean, those that find the drama in something, and there are others that are just basically informational. Now, John Williams has led a largely uncontroversial life. I mean, everybody loves working with him. I mean, he's everybody's friend. Everybody loves his work. So where did you find the drama in the story to try to bring it beyond the informational?
No, that's a great question. I this year I made 2 films. I did one about Faye Dunaway. I did one about this one, exactly. So trust me, the drama, and I love Faye, but of course, I knew that it was going to be a dramatic kind of experience. With John, there are dramatic aspects to his life, the loss of his wife, which again, you'll see him talking about it, but I never asked him about it. I said to him, I know you did a first violin concerto. He said, yes, I did it when my wife died. And then he talked about it. So there was that, and there was, of course, the Boston Pops. But, I don't necessarily think that I'm not a reporter. I consider myself a storyteller. And I was looking for the story, for the inspiration coming from him. And I don't think all stories need to have controversy or drama that is unveiling some hidden horrible secret. I think documentary filmmaking needs to have a point of view, but I think it can also be a feel-good movie, just like, E.T. was a feel-good movie, and the story of John Williams is a feel-good story. And I think, do we need a feel-good story right now? I kind of think we do,
We have time for one more question.
I don't know. I may have, but I don't know if I've seen any of your documentaries. Do you often or anytime start out with maybe very, very simple beginnings, like how they started out in life?
No, I always try to find, and you'll see in the film, I was like, how do I grab the audience? You know, the worst thing you can do is a chronological kind of approach to anything. I was born, no. So you have to also go there at some point. But the way that I really, you know, the thing that was so inspiring for me for 30 years, seeing John and Stephen, and I'm gonna choke up because it's so emotional for me, is this brotherhood. This is not a father-son relationship. This is a brother, older brother, younger brother, you know, relationship. And I felt that that was the heart of my film. That was the beating heart of the story of John Williams, is really that encounter that he had with a young Steven Spielberg. And even though they had done Sugarland Express together, Jaws is really something that cemented in my eyes, you know, the career they've had together for over 50 years, which is very unusual, as you know, in the business to have that kind of connection. And Jaws, you know, when you think about it, was a disaster in the making. We all heard the disastrous stories. I'm making a film on Jaws right now for Steven, for Nat Geo, and it's discovering stories I never heard. I'm just like, how do you survive that? And so once you come back to the editing room and then the scoring stage, and basically you say to your composer, what's my score? And he goes, da-da, da-da, 2 notes. You go like, that's got to be a joke, right? And you'll see in the film, that's my introduction. I don't want to talk about what you're about to see, but that to me was very much the point of entry. So in answer to your question, was really to try and grab people through something that's become very popular, you know, Jaws and the music, pop culture and all that, part of our culture, part of, you know, you hear that music and you know what that means. And then, you know, you're listening on, and now I can tell you when he was born.
Well, I don't want to ruin, like you said, I don't want to ruin the surprises in the film, but one of the things that you do, I have to tell you, like, because I enjoyed it so much, you know, what are movies without the score? And you exhibit this in the film very well, and again, I won't ruin it, by showing some of our favorite movies what that scene would be if there was no music. And it's the impact that it has on the movie-going experience is tremendous. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Laurent.
Thank you, everybody.
Enjoy the movie.